Hey everybody, we have a new sponsor and a special deal for our listeners of Karen Isn't Always Right. If you have any photos or documents that you need to scan, or videotapes, audio tapes, or film reels that you need to import, you should check out avgearguy.com. If you mention the name Karen Isn't Always Right when you order, you're going to get 5% off, and a portion of your order is going to help support the podcast Karen Isn't Always Right. All of those formats degrade over time and are sitting ducks in the case of fire or theft. Why not convert it all to digital? All your memories can be stored safely on the cloud or even a hard drive that fits in your pocket. AV Gear Guy has over 30 years of experience with all kinds of media, and they can accept orders from anywhere in the U.S. Don't forget to mention the name of Karen Isn't Always Right and get 5% off. For more details and to book, visit their website at avgearguy.com. That's avgearguy.com. Hello everybody, welcome to a new episode of Karen Isn't Always Right. Strange couple of weeks that we've had here. With COVID-19, it's changed the entire world, and it's definitely changed the state of the industry that I work in, which is the movie theater exhibition side. So because of that, I'm going to pivot a little bit with regard to this podcast, and I'll still post pre-recorded episodes every Wednesday, but I'm also going to start doing, quote-unquote special episodes, specifically around the impact that COVID-19 has had on I guess specifically the movie theater industry, but really any of the service industry that would have all been interested in this podcast anyway. But the reason maybe focused on the theater industry is because as of right now, at least the big three companies, Regal, AMC, and Cinemark, have had to lay off or furlough every single one of their hourly employees, and they are all shut down completely and have zero revenue coming in, and they aren't currently a part of any of the stimulus packages that are being currently proposed in Congress right now. So what I wanted to do, I had this idea yesterday and ran it by a few people, and I was told it seems like a good idea. So what I want to do is I guess I want to start with this episode to share my own story about, how I got into movie theaters and why I stayed with it for so long, and maybe share some stories that I have that kind of shows the passion I have for this industry and things of that nature. And then my plan is to have guests come on and share very similar stories of their own. And then what I'd like to do beyond that is, as I post these podcast episodes, is to not only myself try to tag as many of the people who work in Hollywood on the production side, whether it's executive producers or actors or whatever, that maybe have some influence and, to be frank, the resources to maybe help out the exhibition side. Because I think what I've seen so far is that a lot of people have actually expressed the realization that they actually miss movie theaters, and that being stuck inside, so many of us are quarantined, being stuck inside, only being able to watch Netflix and Amazon Prime is just not the same. And I'd really, really hate to see this industry die, and I think right now it's at a risk of it. So I think that's my plan, and for those of you who listen, I really appreciate it. And if you could do me a bigger favor and share these episodes as much as you can, not just with your friends, but if you can tag people in, like the people that I just mentioned, and we keep this going and maybe get their attention. I think it could be a really good thing. And currently my wife and I are self-quarantined as we had exhibited some minor symptoms of this virus. We're not really sure yet, and even if we were, it's not like it seems anybody who doesn't have real money can seem to get help right now anyway. So currently we're okay, but we are stuck here for the next few weeks. My wife already works from home, but I can't go into work for at least another couple weeks. And funny enough, I literally had just started transitioning into a different location. I had worked there for all of 4 days, met maybe half my management team and a handful of my employees before all of this really escalated and got real. I ask that, as I do this, you guys bear with me a little bit. I'm going to be upfront with you. I'm a very, very emotional person, and this is all, as it hits everybody hard, this hits me hard too, and I just have a hard time controlling my emotions a little bit. So I just bear with me, and I'm sorry. It's just, obviously this is just really, really tough. I mean, beyond just the normal stress and anxiety associated with the overwhelming magnitude of what's going on, having to be the person that, has to lay off their teams, which I couldn't even do that in person because I couldn't be there in person. But I'm still the one that's directing that situation and things like that. And I have some friends that I really am very grateful for that were able to help me out with that. But my heart just breaks for all of these people. And look, it was a decision that had to be made. It came from the very, very top, and it's all in an effort to try to make sure that once this is all over, people actually do have jobs to come back to. And that's just a terrible, terrible decision that I'm grateful I'm not the one who had to make it, and I do not envy the CEOs of these companies that had to do this. So here we are. Karen isn't always right. So again, we're not going to talk so much about the Karens of the world, because I think at this point, I would look forward to being yelled at by an unreasonable customer right now. If it meant that I could just be around people again in a hustle and the bustle of an open movie theater, But the last time I was in my movie theater for the first half of my time there was nobody there, and it's a it's a 120,000 square foot building, and that's kind of a weird place to be. And I would just like it to be busy again. So anyway, I guess I'll just kind of tell you my story, and if you care, you listen. If you don't, I guess there's other stuff to listen to. So I got started in 1989. My best friend and I had been looking for jobs for a while. We were 15, and at the time, and still is, I guess, it's kind of tough to get a job when you're 15 years old because of the labor laws. So we had been trying everywhere, and I remember we grew up in Kansas City, well, a suburb of Kansas City. We grew up in Overland Park, Kansas. My best friend's name is Dave, and to this date, he's still one of my best friends, and I believe he'll be on this podcast this Saturday, if all things go well. But Dave and I were at the mall. We were at Oak Park Mall in Lenexa, Kansas, and we were just walking around, and we happened to be walking by the AMC theater, a 6 screen that was in this mall, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to apply for a job," and I was like, "Hey, I'll just grab an application with you." So right then and there, we filled out applications, and if I recall, they set up interviews with us right away. Now here's the funny part, is that I had been turned down for so many jobs up to that point because I was 15 years old. So I lied on my application. I told them that I was 16, and I remember Dave went in for his interview, and he came out and he got the job. He was super excited about it. I was like, "Oh man, that's awesome." I was like, "Did you tell him you're 15? And he goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh shit." So I go into this. Well, it may have been reversed. Maybe I went in first. For anybody who's listening to this podcast at all, I have a shitty memory. So bear with me as I tell all these stories. But I remember going through the interview. It went well. And then I do remember talking to Dave and asking if he said how old he was. He said he was 16. And I was like, "Damn it, man," because I stuck with the lie. And I got the job as well. So we were super pumped. And I remember going back my first day, and I remember there was a manager working. But this is my very first job. I'm just a kid. I didn't know how any of this worked. And I remember thinking that the only person I could talk to was the guy that hired me. And that guy's name was Dennis. And so I'm looking for Dennis. Dennis isn't around. I don't get how it works. But I see this other guy. I can't remember his name, but he looked like Superman at the time, the Clark Kent the Christopher Reeve Superman. I remember going up to him and I was just freaking out, and I just felt like I needed to just come clean on the whole age thing. And so I asked if I could talk to him, and I'm shitting my pants. And I was like, look, this is the situation. And I said I was freaking out. I said I needed this job, or wanted this job so badly. I said, but I'm only 15 years old. And he was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And I was like, that's it? Yeah, no problem. All right, I guess I was freaking out for nothing. So that's how I got started in the industry, was by lying. So that's, obviously a great start to my career. But what's really funny is I'm pretty sure this is my very first shift. I go down to the break room, and I'm in full uniform. Like, I was ready to go, and I was early. I go down to the break room. The break room this is a tiny little theater. It's only 6 screens, so it's like a little. It's on the corner of the hallway in the mall, like right when you come in the entry. And you can either go right into the theater, or you can take a right or left, and there's the main hallway of the mall. But and the theater itself is only one little hallway. At the very end of that hallway is the break room. I go into the break room. It's this tiny little room. It's got a couch in it and some lockers and stuff. I'm just sitting there, full uniform, my stupid, 100% polyester pants and vest and my bow tie. And I'm just chilling there, super nervous. And while I'm waiting, these 2 girls walk in. And they were pretty cute. I'm pretty sure I'm still friends with at least one of them on Facebook now. And they come in, and they're laughing and stuff and talking with each other. And I'm just chilling. And then all of a sudden, they just took their clothes off. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? And so they're in their underwear and everything. But I was like, I'm 15 years old. I was like, God damn, this is the place to work, huh? So I'm watching all this go down, and I'm like, this should be a pretty good job. And I was just watching all this happen. I'm like, they, at no point did they acknowledge my existence. I mean, they clearly saw me there. Didn't acknowledge my existence. Didn't say hi. Didn't seem embarrassed by the fact that I was still in there. Didn't ask me to leave. Nothing. And I was like, all right. And now, obviously, there is no way in God's green earth that could happen today, or at least not that I could think of. I certainly, as the GM, wouldn't let it happen. Maybe it does out there, and because I'm a GM, I'm not told about it. But yeah, that was a nice little start to the shift. So anyway, I worked at this theater for a little while. I started as a concessionist, and I just worked behind the stand doing concessionist things. I remember not being a real big fan of working back there. I always found it kind of stressful. I didn't like, there's Karens all the way back then too. I didn't like getting yelled at. And we were really, really busy, or at least I feel like we were, for a tiny little 6-screen theater. I think a real weird way of doing things back then relative to now. I remember they would close off the lobby. Basically, I think it was either 15 or 30 minutes after the last show of that round would start, and they wouldn't let anybody in. People would come out for the refills or whatever, but when people started showing up for the next round of movies, they just held everybody out. And so when the next round of shows was ready to start, I remember like the usher would look over at all of us. We're like deer in headlights, and they were like, y'all ready? And there'd be this huge line of people that would just get unloaded onto us. And it was just like mayhem, and that would last for, 45 minutes to an hour, and you go through that, and then you just repeat. And so there wouldn't be this steady flow like we had. Like now we have what we call even spread. For all the show times are just spread out throughout the day. You don't have this, basically from 7 to 7:45 or whatever, very specific time of rushes and recoveries. It's much more spread. So I remember that used to stress me out a lot. That was a really, really fun theater to work at. I worked with some of my best friends back then, and met some new friends. I remember Darlene, who's somebody I'm still friends with on Facebook, who actually hooked me up with my very first sponsor on this podcast. I think she was my very first supervisor, her and a woman named Daisha. And then I got to work with Dave. I got to work with my friend Tom, Clint. I remember this guy Quincy I used to work with. I remember these very cute girls that I worked with, Lori and Michelle. Whew, man. Good times. But worked with them, and then made a lot of new friends. I remember working with this one dude who, he was in concession. He was probably a little bit older than me, probably 20 or something like that, and probably the most inappropriate guy that I've ever been around. And the stories he would tell about some of his experiences with the ladies. And when you're 15 years old hearing this stuff, you're like, what? So, yeah, I met a lot of really, really cool people at that theater. And then, do you remember Dave got lucky? I don't know if he got lucky, but he always had this way of quote-unquote busting his ass. Really, Dave had the knack for looking busy all the time, and he might tell these stories when he comes on. But I remember he managed to get himself out of concession and to become an usher pretty quickly, and I was really, really jealous of that. And, but anytime there was a manager around, Dave was busy. And I remember I was busy too, but I did fuck around a lot. But yeah, Dave got out of concession. I got stuck in concession for a while, but I ended up being so good at concession that instead of getting out of it, I ended up becoming a supervisor, which, that's great and all, but I would have preferred to have been an usher. And then Dave ultimately became a projectionist. And at that theater, we had 3 different little projection booths in the hallway for the 6-screen. And so each booth had 2 projectors. And I remember the projectionists had their own little set of keys to get them in. And I remember just thinking they were so cool because they had these keys. And I was so jealous of that. And I always wanted that. But yeah, we had a lot of fun there. I remember Tom and I were just reminiscing the other day about working there and how we used to play practical jokes on each other all the time. So we had these polyester uniforms I talked about, and I remember Tom went on break one time and he left his vest in the back room in the scullery, or whatever everybody calls their back rooms of the concession stands. And so he left his vest sitting back there. So I think it was me and Dave, might have been me and someone else. We took his vest and we sprayed it down with water, and then we laid it perfectly flat and put it in the freezer so that when he came back, his vest was frozen solid. And I just still remember to this day of him he was so mad. He was trying to put his vest on, and you could hear it crackling as he shoved his arms through the armholes and tried to button it back up, and he was so pissed. And then we used to do other things like every time someone would walk into the back room, if they walked in the door where there was the 3-compartment sink, the sink was perpendicular to the door. It was pretty much almost right next to it. So as you walked in, every single time, if there was somebody back there, you got sprayed with water right when you walked back in there. So stuff like that. At the time, I remember AMC was testing these homemade cherry limeades. So we used to literally have to make hand squeeze the lime juice, which really sucked. And so you'd get sprayed with lime juice all the time, or people would put it in your drinks. People used to put jalapeno juice in your drinks all the time. As employees, we wouldn't do that to customers, but employees would do that to each other. Stuff like that. I remember another time at this theater, I was a slacker, but I knew when to work and I knew when to slack. And there's this one time I was back there and we had a freezer that wasn't functional. And I don't know why, I was just feeling lazy or something like that. And so I put this 5-gallon bucket in this freezer upside down, and I remember sitting on it with the door closed, just chilling. And I remember my general manager walking back there, and his name was Steve. He had this real weird way of talking. He couldn't, I don't know, he had an issue in the top of his mouth. And he couldn't really touch the top of his tongue to the roof of his mouth when he talked. And so he kind of talked like this, And so he had a very distinctive voice. So he'd walk back there. I remember him coming back there while I was in the freezer, and I heard his voice, and I was like, oh shit. And he was very particular. He was probably one of the people I learned how to be so detailed from. But he would walk back there, and he's just poking around and stuff and getting people to do stuff. And I remember his voice, and I was like, oh, please don't. And all of a sudden, the door to my freezer opens up, and I'm just sitting on this bucket. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, I'm on break, man. He goes, get the hell out of there. And, there was one of those times he probably could have written me up, could have fired me or whatever, and he just let it go. I remember not liking him a lot, and in retrospect, I really should have, because, he was just detail-oriented. He was just very particular. He used to keep us a lot longer than he probably should have, though. I remember back then, I don't know that there was a whole lot of attention paid to labor laws at the time, because, dude, I would close concession on Friday, Saturday nights, and I'd be there till, we used to run what's that? Rocky Horror Picture Show. So we used to run Rocky Horror Picture Show at midnight, and I don't think 15-year-olds were really allowed to work that late. Maybe. I could be wrong. They're certainly not now. But we would be there till, I don't know, 1:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that, and we would be closing concession, and he would come back there, and he'd like make us re-fucking decorate the entire concession stand, moving shit around and stuff like that. It was super, super annoying. Now I get it. But like, man, it used to drive me crazy. He would make us do that stuff. So I got a lot more stories from that theater, but move on to the next one. So we were opening a new theater. Would have been probably 91-ish, somewhere in that time frame. Yeah, I think it was 90, 91. So we were opening a new theater in downtown Kansas City. It's now called the Parkway 12. Back then it was just Ward Parkway 12. And so it was just a 12 screen. I'm pretty sure it's now a 14 screen. So it went from like 12 to 22 back down to 14. So I went there to help open that theater. And I remember that theater was cranking. There were moments, there were times when we would sell out every single auditorium. And I'm pretty sure we would do that with some relative frequency. So I went to that theater as a concession supervisor as well. It took me forever to get out of concessions. So anybody who's ever worked for me in recent years, if you ever wonder why I hate concession or being in concession, it's because I was stuck there for so long. And I just developed an absolute hatred for being back there. So yeah, I went there as a supervisor, and man, it was cranking busy, and it was in a mall as well. And in that area, it was a little bit of a rougher area, but I think the city was kind of trying to draw people back to the mall and stuff. So yeah, we were busy. I eventually, if I recall, got to be a box cashier as well, and I kind of liked that. Although, you're kind of stuck. One of the reasons I didn't like concession and box was just because you're sort of stuck in one place. And I always liked ushering because, you get to move around everywhere. You kind of have free reign with relatively little supervision. It was uncommon, I guess, for managers to be in the concession stand. That's why they had supervisors. But every once in a while, Dennis, the guy that hired me at the other theater, he ended up being a manager at this new theater as well. And he would jump back there a lot. I think he liked doing that. He was like really gregarious. Like I think he just really loved people. There was one time, the way I met a guy named Stan Durwood. Anybody who works for AMC probably knows who this guy is, but Stan Durwood was the owner of AMC at the time. And I met him because I remember we ran out of cups or something, and I had to go upstairs to the booth where we stored cups to grab them, but it was really, really busy. I remember hauling ass. I'm telling you, I worked hard. I remember hauling ass around the corner. I come bolting around the corner, and I slammed right into this old guy and knocked him on his ass. And I'm like helping him up, and I remember an usher coming over to help him up as well. And I apologized and stuff like that, and he was okay. But he ends up going back into his movie or whatever, and the usher's like, "You dumbass." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Man, you just knocked Stan Durwood on his ass." And I was like, "Who's Stan Durwood?" He's like, "It's the fucking owner of the company, bro." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, lots of good moments for me back then. There was another time, seriously, bad decisions on my part, yo. Another time where we screwed around a lot, and for a little while there, we had the Fire Extinguisher Wars of 91, I believe is what it was called. And you could count on just about any time you walked into the concession stand, into the back room, you'd probably get sprayed by a fire extinguisher. And it's funny for two reasons. One, because it's cold as shit. But two, we wore black uniforms, and it turns your entire uniform white, so somebody's got to spend like 10 minutes cleaning themselves up. It was funny, and I think by then I was 16 or 17 years old. We didn't really think about the consequences of something like that. We were just trying to have fun. And I remember getting a phone call one day at home, and it was the senior manager of the theater. He was like, "Hey, I need you to come in. We got to talk to you for a second." I was like, "All right." I really wasn't thinking anything about it. Back then we didn't have cell phones where we were texting each other all the time, so there was no heads up given to me. And so I go in, and I remember going in. They had this little conference room. I remember going into the conference room, and my manager sits me down. He goes, "Hey, I need to ask you some questions about some stuff." He goes, "We just recently had a fire inspection, and every single fire extinguisher in this building is almost empty, because what we do is just rotate that out with a different one when it emptied out." And so he goes, "Do you know anything about that?" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck my life." I was like, "Yeah, I do." And so I kind of told him what was going on. And he goes, "Okay." He goes, "It's a good thing that you didn't lie about it, because your name was one of the ones mentioned, and I probably would have fired you for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to demote you from supervisor back to a regular employee, and then we'll see how things go." And I was like, "All right." So I was very, very grateful that I don't even think I got written up. I think I was just demoted. But if anybody out there who might have been my manager at the time that's listening to this can spark in my memory, then certainly feel free. But I'm pretty sure I didn't get written up. I think I just got demoted. And that taught me a lesson, of like I say it taught me a lesson. I certainly didn't ever do anything like that again. I did some other dumb shit, which we'll get to. But it was fun. It was funny. But I understand what, obviously what could have happened. God forbid if there had been a fire. Oh my God. So pretty stupid thing to do. And I probably should have been fired for it. And there was a lot of people that did get in trouble for that. But I did turn around, I kind of learned my lesson at the moment and busted my ass and really showed them that I could be a good employee. And I think shortly after that, I think I got to be a supervisor again. And then I ultimately went into box as well. And so I kind of bounced back and forth. And that's at one point at that theater, we were not very far from from AMC's home office. I want to say maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Their old home office. They're in a suburb of Kansas now, in Leawood, Kansas now. But at one point, I got to be in their handbook. And so what I'll probably do at some point soon is I'll upload that picture onto my website so you can all see what I looked like as an idiot in my uniform and my flock of seagulls haircut, looking real sharp. But yeah, and that's been passed around to some of my current colleagues, which is always a pleasure. So Dan, if you're listening, thanks for sharing that with everybody. Not that I don't share it anyway. I just like to give them shit. So anyway, let me share one other story I have with that. I remember a very, very slow Sunday afternoon. We got very little attention from the managers on Sundays at that theater. Because I'm pretty sure they had a TV upstairs, either in the conference room or the office, and I think they would watch football on Sundays. And so especially on slow Sundays, there was just shit going on downstairs. And so I remember one time at this theater, we had these really, really slick floors, like these sealed concrete floors are covered with an epoxy or something like that, which probably wasn't the best idea in retrospect, but whatever. And it may be different nowadays because that theater's still around. But I remember this one slow Sunday, we took, I think, an entire case of salt, and we emptied it onto the floor and spread it out over the entire floor. And then we crushed a courtesy cup, and then we got two of the toy brooms, and we played hockey in the back room, I don't know, for like an hour and a half back there, just playing hockey all afternoon. That was a pretty fun time. I do not remember who I played with, but it was pretty awesome. We would play lacrosse every once in a while too. So we had two ice machines there, which is kind of crazy for not really a big, by today's standards, not a real big movie theater. It was only 12 screens at the time, but we had two ice machines in the back of that concession stand, and so one person would stand on one side and the other person would stand on the other side, and we would throw ice back and forth at each other and try to catch them with the little ice scoops. Not the ones from the front, but the bigger ones that you fill the ice buckets with. So it was a lot of fun. I remember one time in the stock room that was right off that back room, I built a throne out of 50-pound popcorn seed bags. They are now 35-pound bags of seed, probably for OSHA reasons. One time I laid them all out flat on the shelves, and I remember laying on them. I wasn't like sleeping or anything. I was just chilling. And I remember a different manager, I think it was Dennis, came back. Dennis was really cool. He was the quote-unquote cool manager there, although he had his moments. He was cool, but he was a hard worker, and he I think he really cared. And he cared a lot about his employees. And I think he's somebody that I kind of tried to emulate myself after a little bit. There's another guy, Matt, who I'm currently friends with on Facebook, but I haven't talked with much. But Darlene is trying to get me to have him on the show, so maybe I'll try to do that sometime soon. So Matt, if you're listening, I remember thinking a lot of you as well. There was another guy, oh God, what was his name? He ended up going to work for studios. What was that guy's name? He did a lot too. He was a very strong manager. Anyway, but Dennis came back there, caught me laying down on these popcorn bags, and he just gave me a little shit about it, and then I got to move on with life. So that was good. You know, I didn't get in too much trouble, but enough to be like, dude, get off your ass and work. And then I remember one other thing from that theater too, where I had a really, really bad temper when I was a kid, and not being able to control it very well at all. I mean, that continued for a long, long time, but there was one time, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember in the middle of the back room, there was a stack of bibs, the soda bibs, and they were just sitting there. So maybe stock had come and they just hadn't been put away or something like that. But something had happened that set me off, and I remember there was a small broom sitting nearby, and I was so mad that I took the broom and I stabbed the box, not really thinking about what might happen when I did that. And the broom went straight through this box. And I was like, God damn it. And then without really thinking about it, I pulled the broom out. And then what do you think happened? Syrup went, it just blub, 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 all over the entire floor. And then it was at that moment that I was like, oh shit. And I'm just sitting there. I don't know what to do. And I remember this girl that I worked with comes walking back into the stand, or into the back room, and she sees this, and she sees my face, and she just sees me standing there, and she's like, what did you do? And I was like, oh, I don't know, I fucked up. And I think I remember her helping me. You know, we obviously got a mop, and we tried to get this, it took forever to clean that up. I mean, there's just syrup everywhere. I did manage to get it cleaned up before a manager got back there. So that was good. I'm sure that they were short on syrup that week. And so no manager ever found out. I'm pretty sure this is certainly the first time I've ever told that story in public. I don't work for AMC anymore, so I guess you guys can't fire me. And hopefully the company I do work for, you know, that was a long time ago. It's like 30 years ago. So cut me some slack, please. I was young and stupid. And then ultimately what happened at that theater is I ended up getting fired from that theater. Or maybe I self-terminated. I don't know how they put it down. I remember. So eventually I had a pager, and I remember. Yeah, that was those days. And I remember Pearl Jam was playing. I'm pretty sure it was like one of their first major concerts. They were playing a thing called Day on the Hill. I think that was at KU. University of Kansas, which wasn't too far from where I grew up, and I really wanted to go to this concert. This was right when Pearl Jam was really. This may have been the thing that kind of like, you know, made Pearl Jam, and I really wanted to go to this concert, so I wanted the whole weekend off, and so I'd requested the weekend off. And I think it was like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think I wanted all of that time off because I was going to just go spend the entire weekend in there. I don't really remember all the details, but what I do remember is that the request went into 2 work weeks because, you know, we're Friday through Thursday. And so I remember I remember looking at the schedule for the first week, and I wasn't scheduled. And then I remember telling a friend of mine who wasn't going. I remember her name was Cynthia. And we were friends, and I remember telling her, hey, can you make sure you check my schedule, and if I'm scheduled, page me so that I can call the theater and talk to them about it or whatever. Now, look, I don't know why I didn't just take it upon myself to call and ask for my schedule. There might have been a policy in place where, like, nobody's allowed to give you your schedule over the phone. I don't know. So I remember telling her, can you just let me know, and I'll call the theater, and I'll see if I can get it worked out or whatever. Well, I never got a page or anything like that from her, so I assumed everything was okay. And I remember after I got back, I remember going into the theater to physically check my schedule, and I remember walking in, and this one manager, I don't remember his first name. I think I remember his last name was either Hand or Foot. I can't remember which. And I remember, and this is probably because I remember not liking him, but it may be just because of how this worked out. He might have been a perfectly good guy, but he saw me. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, I'm just checking my schedule. He's like, "You don't work here anymore." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you don't work here anymore. You missed your shift on Saturday." I was like, What the fuck? I didn't know I was working Saturday." He's like, "Well, that ain't my problem." Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. This a long time ago. And I just remember like being stunned, and I didn't know any better to maybe try to like dig into it a little bit. I just remember walking out of there going, "Jesus Christ, I just lost my fucking job," you know? And so I was so caught off guard by that. And so yeah, I mean, I was done there. And you know, maybe there was shit that I had done that was enough of it that they just decided I wasn't worth keeping around. Maybe I wasn't as great of an employee as I really thought I was, because that certainly can happen. So yeah, that was my 10-year, my first time around with AMC was back then. So then I remember, you know, I had a little bit of time off trying to figure out, you know, what was I going to do. I can't remember if I maybe got another job doing something different for a little while. So this would have been probably 92. And I remember, I think I went for a run or a bike ride or something, and I went to this high school in Overland Park called Blue Valley North High School, and they had built this brand new movie theater right next door to that high school. I remember I was out riding my bike, and I remember that they had built this movie theater, and so I swung by, and I was like, I should get a job there. So I swung by and got an application. And I'm all sweaty and everything, and I figured I'd just apply it and turn it in. I didn't think I'd actually get the job right then and there or anything like that. I had no illusions of it. But this guy, Matt Keeling, who I'm also friends with still on Facebook, who I ended up working with at a different company. I'll get to that one later. But Matt, I remember him interviewing me, and maybe I'm misremembering it, but I'm pretty sure it was Matt. And he interviewed me, and I'm just sweating all over the place, and I got the job on the spot. And I'm pretty sure he hired me as a concession supervisor, like on the spot. That may not be accurate. It may have taken a couple months, but I'm pretty sure it was pretty quick, if not right away, that I was a supervisor. And again, in concession, so yay. And so, yeah, I got the job right away. And so this is a Dickinson movie theater, and Dickinson's not around any longer. They were primarily a Midwestern regional company. I don't know how many theaters they had back then. Again, I didn't know a lot back then. I would have been 17 at the time. And so I didn't give a shit about that. But they were based out of Kansas City. And this theater was also really, really busy. It was a 12-screen theater. We had 2 concession stands that split, you know, on each side of the lobby, and they were always busy. I remember I may not have been in concession for very long, because I remember training in concession, and then I think I got made an usher very, very quickly, and then became an usher supervisor very, very quickly. And I remember I started, so I think that was the summer of my... Was that the summer of my junior or senior year? That might have been the summer of my junior or my senior year. So I might have been 18 at the time. I can't remember for sure. But that sounds right. It might have been 18. And so I remember starting college. I was going to Johnson County Community College. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And so I was just I was going to school, and I was working at this theater. And I would work a lot of days, because I wanted to just take all my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I had the rest of the days off. And so I would just work daytimes at the theater, which was great because I partied a lot, and so I'd party at night, and then I didn't have to be at the theater till like 11, and I'd work like 11 to 6 or something like that. I'd work the weekends too. I was basically just trying to work as much as I could, because I had no money at the time. I was terrible about saving my money. But anyway, so I'd work daytimes. I remember it was if I was an usher, I'd work with this old guy named Ray, and he was a fun guy to work with. He was probably in his 60s, 70s, something like that. I feel like he might have been even older, but you know how it goes when you're young. And I remember Ray had a lazy eye, so every time he was talking to you thought he was looking at something else. And he would tell the most inappropriate jokes all the time. I still to this date remember some joke he used to tell about, you know, where the punchline was this woman who said, "Okay, I'll keep an eye out for you." And it was a really dirty joke, so use your imagination, I guess. But I just remember, like, bro, you're going around telling everybody these super dirty jokes, man. Like, you have no idea. Again, it's like the kind of shit that you just can't do today. and the responsible GM in me says absolutely you shouldn't. But I know shit happens all the time, but with today's day and age with HR and things of that nature, it's like there's just a lot of stuff that you just can't do now that a lot of people really got away with back then. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, it really did. It was one of the reasons that made the job a lot of fun. Because his stuff didn't bother me. I didn't care. But yeah, there was a lot of fun at that theater as well. I remember a lot of times, during the spring and summer, when it was slow. Again, there was no even spread scheduling back then, so there was very definitive rushes and recoveries. And during the recoveries, when you're an usher, it just wasn't a lot for us to do. The management team there didn't make us do much extra cleaning. It was a pretty basic building, so there just wasn't much to do. And we were this theater company could still be in existence had they maybe managed their expenses a little bit better, because we had so much payroll. I mean, I remember there being like 8-9 ushers at a time sometimes, during quote unquote busy times. Like, I can tell you, I've worked at 20 screen, 24 screen theaters, 16 screen theaters where you don't have half that sometimes. So there was a lot of times where we would just be standing around like in a circle in the hallways just talking. And, manager would walk by, get to work, but there'd be nothing to do. A lot of times we'd just be sitting in theaters watching movies. And then sometimes during the nice weather, we would go outside, we'd play hacky sack. And then also at this particular location, at the very end of the hallways, there was a set of restrooms. And then next to the set of restrooms would be a door that goes through into like an usher closet, and then another door that takes you outside, right? So it's kind of like this little airlock situation. But the usher closets, they weren't very big, but they were big enough for a few people to just kind of chill. And so sometimes we just always sitting in these usher closets doing nothing until the next show to clean. So there was a lot of that. And this is where I met some really good friends as well. So I remember one of my very good friends still to this date, Ted. I was in his wedding. He was at my wedding. We still keep in very close touch. I remember, Chris and Joe, Ryan, Britt, his sister, Lauren. I'll get to Britt and Lauren later. A lot of girls worked at this theater, man. And then I just met a lot of very, very good friends there. I've met a lot of really good friends at all my theaters, and to... I've got all these great funny stories, probably funnier to me than you, but I think a lot of you guys that work at movie theaters can probably really relate and have your own stories that you could share. And it's the people really that have made each theater that I've worked at fantastic places to work, and it's what has made me return every single time and ultimately make it into a career, because it certainly wasn't the money for a very long time. I mean, it took me a long, long time before I got to a place where I was making what I would consider to be good money. But as you move up in each of these companies, you certainly can get to a place where you can certainly make a living and support a family and things like that. And if you stick around long enough, you can make what I would consider pretty decent money, And but early on, especially when you're an employee, you're making shit. I mean, but everybody knows it, and that was sort of the reputation that movie theaters had back then and some probably now to a degree, is that the pay isn't you could go somewhere else and probably make more money, but the atmosphere isn't going to be what it is working in a movie theater, and you just work with so many different people, and you encounter the general public, which say what you may, there may be a lot of those Karens out there, and there's a lot of shitty people out there, but there's also a lot of really, really good people out there. I've encountered so many really, really cool customers and guests that have just made my day, and hopefully I've made their day too. The friends and relationships I've made throughout the years, over the past 30 years of working in movie theaters, I mean, it's been so satisfying to look back on. I mean, just even today, like I said, I just transitioned into a different location, and I spent about almost 5 years at my last location, and the relationships I developed with that team has just... It just sucks that it was hard enough to leave to go to a different theater, and there was a lot of moments of working at that theater that was very stressful and very like, oh my God, I just want to be done. But then, you look back on it and we've been through so much together, and sorry. These people are, as far as I'm concerned, these people are my friends. And what's happened to them is it just sucks, and it's nobody's fault. I mean, I know people are going to be mad at the company for having to have done what's happened as far as their jobs are concerned. But the hope is that this is all going to be over fairly soon, and they'll have jobs to come back to. I mean, at least the company I'm working for has left the door open to say, we want you back. But I miss them terribly. I try to keep in touch with them as much as they are willing to keep in touch with me. And I think that's probably going for a lot of people. There's a theater competitor right like 10 seconds from where I live. And the general manager of that theater is a good friend of mine because she used to work for me at my current company at a different theater as a senior assistant manager. And, I know what she's going through. She hasn't been a GM very long, and what she's having to go through right now with her own team and all of this. And it's just scary for a lot of people. But again, it all comes back to these relationships and just this environment that we've been so lucky to have worked in, and to be able to provide people an opportunity to escape. We all can sit here and bitch and moan from time to time about how people are stupid or mean or whatever, but at the end of the day, we all know that we have this job. Jesus. And we know that we're giving people an outlet of something to do and to share, whether it's with a date or whether it's with their kids or just their whole family, or just to go with a friend or whatever it is, and we're giving them this experience. And I think, look, man, if my goal of reaching the other side of the theater industry, of the production side of the theater industry, if any of you are listening, of those actors or producers or whatever that have the resources, I just want you to know, like, this means so much to us, this job, to be able to provide jobs to all these people, but also a sense of satisfaction in that we're providing these experiences to all these customers and really guests, to have these people in our living room, so to speak, to give them something to escape to. God, if there was ever a time to need movie theaters, now would be it, so people can just get the hell out of their house and escape and go watch a movie. And I think that's what I'm really trying to accomplish here, is to just plead to anybody to give us a hand and give us this opportunity to really allow theaters to make a comeback when the time is right. Because hopefully this is all going to be over soon. Because this fucking sucks, man. I'm telling you. I have so many GM colleagues that are in their buildings today alone, and I'm keeping in touch with as many people as possible right now. This has brought us, closer together than we probably ever have been, because it's just, we have to stay in touch, and everybody's saying, my God, it's so lonely here. And it's just, this is insane of like trying to, they're all trying to get a little bit of work done as much as they can, of like maybe cleaning or doing some organization or whatever, things that they maybe didn't have time to do while we've been open. But this is not the most ideal situation for them to do that, because it's so hard to focus, and it's depressing, and there's a lot of anxiety, and a lot of these layoffs that occurred for the company that I'm with, these just occurred last weekend, between Thursday through Saturday, and the emotional impact that it's had on GMs. And look, for those of you this has happened to, you don't have to care about our emotions right now and our feelings right now, because it happened to you. But I can tell you for a fact, this has been by far the absolute hardest thing that any of us have ever had to do in our lives, not just our careers, but our lives, because it has impacted so many people. And it's just such an unfortunate situation, but we want to make sure that there are jobs to come back to. And So I guess that's what I had to share today. I just wanted to share a few stories. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, and hopefully there was some entertainment value there. And sorry for getting a little worked up, but I did try to warn you. I'm working on a YouTube channel so that maybe I can do these, get some video going too, so you can watch these. You can either watch or listen or whatever, at least for the ones that I'm just doing by myself. If you are interested at all in coming on and just sharing your own stories, I would love to have you. Please reach out to me. Christopher at KIARpodcast.com. So that's KIARpodcast.com. Christopher at KIARpodcast.com. You can reach me on Facebook. My cell phone number, 720-371-6154. You can text me for all I care. But I would love to have you on, or if you know somebody that would want to come on, please send them my way. I just think the more people we have to share their story, the better. If you don't feel comfortable sharing a story on the actual show, shoot me an email. Just tell me some anecdotes you have that you thought were great, that really made a difference in you wanting to stick with this as a job, and why you love working in movie theaters so much, because I would love to hear from you, and I really think there are a lot of people out there that would love to hear about those stories. So and please share these episodes out there on your social media. Tell your friends. Again, if you're on Twitter, try to tag in as many of the folks in the production side of this industry as possible, and let's really spread the word. Like, I'm not trying to make money doing this. I just want to try to help. I'm trying to keep my own mind busy, maybe give you all some entertainment, and maybe make a positive impact on things. So I really appreciate everybody listening today, and I hope to hear from a lot of you, and I really hope to see everybody sharing this as much as possible. So thanks for listening, and I hope to talk to you guys soon.